The Dallas Cowboys kick off training camp this week, and Micah Parsons will be there. We'll tell you why that's a big deal next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, back from vacation, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. First of all, Landon, how was your vacation?
It was great. It was good to get away. Unfortunately, I promised to do a question and answer, and I just sank into a hot tub instead. So we'll get plenty of that when training camp starts here this week. This week, Marcus. This week is training camp.
So the Cowboys have their opening press conference on Monday. I think their first practice on Tuesday. One of the players that will be there is Micah Parsons, and we were wondering if that was going to be the case as he continues to wait to get his new contract, which, thanks to TJ Watt's, going to be a little bit bigger probably whenever he gets it. But first of all, are you surprised that Micah is going to be present during Cowboys camp?
I don't think so. I mean, I kind of felt like that was the sense that we were getting from him. Now, I think there's always a need to, or a feeling to want to like kind of protect Parsons a little bit in training camp. I feel like that may even be more reined in a little bit with his participation. Which kind of we'll talk about a little bit in segment 3, I think, because I think that, is part of the reason we have some of these workout players. But I think, he's talked a lot about wanting to be a bit better leader this year. And he's, to his credit, he's shown up at all these different workouts, and he's, despite the contract negotiation. So this was obviously the next step in that. And he continues to show up. So I think it's going to be one of these kind of hold in situations, or where, he's there and but he's not doing everything. And maybe there, once we get the pads on, there will be another conversation that happens at that point. But I think that the important part for the most part, at least as far as the rest of the team goes, you're going to get Micah Parsons there and his presence there, and he's going to be part of the install and helping the young guys get better and just, being part of the team when you need him there.
Well, and that's what I wanted to talk about at the first part, because this first week of training camp, it's training camp, but it's really like an extension of mini camp in a way, because they don't start putting the pads on until next week, I think.
So it's the 27th, I think, is the first padded practice.
Yeah, so you've got an entire week. This first week is more of it's like walkthroughs and ramp up, and they're just trying to get these guys on the field, see where their conditioning is at, work on installing some of the offense. So I think once we get to next week, once you start getting into these real one-on-one drills, if he doesn't have a deal by then I'm really curious to see what his participation is. I just don't care that much the first week, because we still have 2 weeks before we even get to August.
Yeah, I mean, obviously starting a little bit early this year, and I tend to think that we'll see. I mean, maybe not, but I tend to think that now that we're all together at training camp, the conversations start accelerating a little bit more. This is usually when the Joneses start reaching out and having these conversations with agents and start kind of, re-entering the ring with negotiations. And it sounded like from where they left off, they were very close. So there's a high likelihood that this deal gets done this week, in my opinion. But I think even if it doesn't, and if it doesn't, I think we're going to have another threshold to kind of cross once the pads come on. And what does Micah's participation in pads look like if he doesn't have a new deal?
So why is it a big deal that Micah Parsons showed up, in your opinion, even if he's holding in, even if he's just standing there during the drills? Why is that a big deal?
I think it's a big deal because, again, much like the offense is kind of going through a transition, the defense has a new defensive coordinator again. And just for him being there, especially as the centerpiece of the defense, I think it's common for us to kind of compare his situation to CD's situation, but to be honest, his importance actually kind of puts him more like in the Dak situation.
A little bit,
And
yeah.
and Dak, it was important for the team that Dak come to training camp, and because they couldn't really facilitate it. So even when he was not dealing with contract stuff, it was a hold in. He was showing up and kind of working through practice. And I don't know if Micah's participation is going to be quite at that level, but I think as far as Micah understanding his importance to the installation, him being here because he's such a centerpiece in this and he may be a moving centerpiece. I think he understood that he needed to be here early on, at the very least present, so that he can kind of be helpful and part of the install as he is a centerpiece in how it gets installed and what we're doing.
I also think it's important that Mike is there working out because even if he's not participating in the drills necessarily, you're going to know that he's in shape, getting ready to go. So whenever the deal signed, he can be fully ready for the season. As to compare it to like CeeDee Lamb, who was not at training camp last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to say that CeeDee wasn't working out, because he was, but it's just different when you're working out by yourself compared to being on the field with your team. Because the moment that deal gets signed, he can be right there at practice, getting in, in the motions with everything else. It's just a great thing to have him there, because now it's a distraction, because whenever your best defensive player doesn't have a contract, it's a little bit of a distraction. But the fact that he's there and we're not wondering, hey, when is Micah Parsons going to show up? When is he going to practice? It does kind of ease some of the concerns here.
And let's also not forget in all these conversations who we're actually talking about. Like, Micah Parsons is one of the most competitive people you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
So I think once he even gets to practice, he's not going to be able to help himself. He'll jump in when it's competitive time. He'll get plenty of reps and plenty of opportunities. So it may not be Micah Parsons full go, just as a kind of show for the agent and for the negotiation ploy. But I think that, much like we saw in minicamp and OTAs, Micah's passion for the game is probably going to overcome him at some point. He's going to get in there more.
And the last thing, Micah's talked about being a better leader and making this his team. He's going to be part of the meetings. Even if he's not necessarily practicing, he's going to be in the meetings.
Yeah.
He's going to be there helping the culture, helping some of these young guys learn. And that's incredibly important, even if he's not practicing. And again, I just want to stress, they don't really do a lot of heavy football things until next week. So don't freak out if Micah's not practicing on Tuesday. It's not that big of a deal.
The most important part at this point and really going forward is the team building aspect and getting there and, kind of the installation as we've talked about, but also just learning who these guys are. Some of these young guys, it's a new team. So, and showing his face, that's part of being a leader. So I think that's the important part, is all what we just described. And he's going to be there and participating in that part.
All right, let's talk about Jaden Blue, who apparently there was a big story over the weekend about Jaden Blue. We'll discuss that and more next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it just a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are out getting sunburned at the beach. I love FanDuel. I've been using it all summer long to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Just open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Workplace stress is at an all-time high. 61% of the global workforce is reporting higher than normal stress levels right now. This summer is the perfect time to take small steps to focus on your wellness and manage the challenges that come with your workday. And of course, most of us just can't quit our jobs or take endless vacations, but we can start small, whether it's getting outside for a couple more minutes each day, or maybe adding some more walking to your life, or talking to someone who can help you navigate life's challenges. That is where BetterHelp comes in. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners can get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. All right, Lynn, I don't know if I need to fill you in. I don't. I know you don't. But there was some Jaden Blue buzz over the weekend, and it started with our squad show on Thursday, which you need to be watching on Mondays and Thursdays with Glenn Stretch Smith and Jeff Biggs. And on the Thursday show, Glenn Stretch, he opened the show talking about some of the things that he's heard about Jaden Blue from the offseason, some of it from the pre-draft process, talking about his work ethic and maybe some of the concerns going on with him. I'm going to preface all this by saying that it sounds like the Cowboys are very high on Jaden Blue. They're really excited about the player. But I want your thoughts on kind of this whole thing before I dive in.
Well, first of all, I'm a little bit. I was surprised, obviously on vacation, and got a lot of notifications about what was going on, and I kind of tried to catch up a little bit because I hadn't seen the squad show yet. I'm sorry, and I on vacation, and then apparently there was an article as well that you had written, so I had to catch up and watch all that and read the article, and from the hot tub, it was fantastic.
Best place to read that article from.
Best place. And, it's a little hypocritical to read an article judging where a player's work ethic is while I'm in the hot tub, but it's okay.
Fair point.
So once I kind of caught up to everything, I mean, first of all, I'm a little surprised that this was a little blew up as much as it did, because to me it doesn't seem any different really than what we've heard previously from guys like Dane Brugler and the Beast. Yeah. I talked to Stretch, certain points after all this, and he called me and we talked. And to me, it's like, I didn't really, kind of press him on anything like, who he talked to or where the source or the timing of any of it. But to me, like, all of this could be stemming from kind of an initial opinion on the player from college, not like, how they're participating in OTAs or mini camps or like that, and I think it's fair for people that were potentially skeptical of the player during the pre-draft process to continue that skepticism throughout the OTAs and minicamps and want to be proven wrong in training camp, right? And I think that was kind of the opinion that was being relayed by Stretch into this situation. So, I look, I don't think, and I think the part that actually got blown out of proportion to me is kind of everyone's reaction to it, because, I saw people attacking you like it was your opinion on it, which I know it's all part of this, but it's also just like, we rightfully get on reporters and folks when they misquote folks or when they aren't, looking deep enough into the situation. I would challenge the general populace to make sure you just read a little deeper into what is going on before kind of jumping onto this, because ultimately, like, this is what was suggested is that a 21-year-old kid is not, fully mature yet, which I think, is duh.
He's not getting the first and he's not the last, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, if this is a case where that he takes this and uses it as bulletin board material, fantastic.
That's great. Yes. Great for us. We love that, right?
We're all Cowboys fans. So yes, absolutely. But I also think that this isn't a situation where, some have suggested where Stretch is lying or whatever. I mean, this is not even Stretch's opinion. This is something that Stretch has heard from someone who knows. Yeah. So I think that's worth hearing it, especially when we've heard completely other sources suggest the same thing from other coaching staffs at other places Blue has been.
Yeah, and I don't need to defend Stretch. He's a big boy. He'll do it himself, right? Like, but I know there's been some of these critiques like, hey, he hasn't coached the Cowboys in so many years. Why? How does he have sources? These coaches talk. He's got other connections besides just the Cowboys. It's not hard to go back and look at where he's been and figure out kind of maybe he's getting some of this from. But I think the point is, yeah, Jaden Blue, I think he does work hard on the off the field. We've seen videos posted where he's working out. There was a great story about him during the COVID season, getting guys together and working out, and all that's great. I think what we've heard from other sources, including like Brian Broaddus and Bob Sturm, is that there's always, something. And now it's not necessarily always bad, but it could be little things that maybe hold him back from reaching a ceiling. Or at least that's what people felt like in high school and college. There was a big ESPN article that came out, I think 4 years ago now, about him skipping his senior year of high school. And I think maybe that rubbed some people the wrong way during the recruiting trail. All of this to say he's 21, and I don't care all that much. Honestly, this is my point. I don't care all that much because 21-year-olds a lot of times act like 21-year-olds. I expect once he gets into camp, once he's in the building, hopefully things start to change. And again, I'm not suggesting that anything's bad right now, but a lot of these times these guys do grow up in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that the key thing to kind of take away from this is that there's no new report on this. This is just like what the general consensus on him was going into being a professional football player. What's going on in OTAs and mini camps is really kind of just for him and for a lot of these rookies, an extension of the kind of pre-draft process of just learning how to be a professional, right? What happens at training camp is ultimately what's remembered, right? No one cares about what happens, what's going on in training camp or mini camp or your pre-draft process once you get into mini camp and you're competing. So let's work it out there and see how this works.
And I thought Bob Sturm summed it up really well on Sunday morning. He said the Cowboys were aware of all this kind of stuff from high school, college, and a lot of it is, 2 step forward, 1 step back. And again, that happens. And yet they were still willing to take the risk on him because they believe on what he can become in the NFL. And the Cowboys need it. They need him to be that guy that can add some juice to the offense, that can be a dynamic receiver. You see why the Cowboys are so high on him. Just because they're really high on him doesn't mean he's a perfect player either. But it's all that's just part of the reason why somebody like that falls maybe to the 5th round instead of going in the 3rd round.
I remember hearing similar conversations and similar true conversations on some levels about a guy like Des Bryant. And that didn't stop Des Bryant from being an absolutely, on a Hall of Fame type run early in his career. So, I think this is just, he's 21 and he's learning. That's okay.
Yeah. Again, once we get to camp, we'll see him on the field. It'll be great. And none of the nonsense will matter. All right. Let's talk about some other things that are happening regarding the Dallas Cowboys, including some workout players that could potentially help the roster this year. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Rouette. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rouette Ready. Rouette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. And effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rouette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head over to Rouette.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That is RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit Rouette website for full safety information. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We also wanted to let you know that the Locked On NFL Top 100 is officially here, voted on by the NFL host of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by experts that cover their teams every single day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't miss to see where Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Braden Aubrey landed. It's a great list. It's really exciting. A lot of good debate over on Locked On Sports Today, so go check it out. All right, let's talk about some workout players. The Cowboys are working out 3 defensive ends on Monday. First of all, it seems interesting that defensive end is the player is the spot that they're spending some of these resources at.
Yeah, I mean, you and I talked about it before the show. I think it has a lot to do with kind of not so much in season stuff, but how timelines are going with recoveries and just where players are at certain points of their career. For instance, as we talked in the first segment, Micah Parsons, right? Like they're going to try to protect him anyways, just because he's such a high profile player that we need to be okay and healthy through the season. But beyond that, obviously he's kind of doing this hold in thing, and until that gets resolved, he's probably just not going to be taking as many snaps, right? Add in Sam Williams. He's coming off an ACL injury. We're all very excited about where he is in his recovery, but absolutely no reason to overwork Sam Williams coming off of an ACL injury. Really have to be careful with his snap count. Another guy you probably can't count on for a huge amount of training camp facilitating practice snaps, right? Snap eaters. We talk about them in the regular season too, right? Training camp exists too. There's just so many snaps you have to facilitate practice with, and when you have to protect, you have to serve two masters of protecting your good players and having enough quality players to facilitate practice. You have to do stuff like this. You have to sign guys at a spot where maybe you feel good for the regular season for talent and depth wise in order to facilitate practice. And Dante Fowler is another guy, right? A veteran guy who's just not going to get as many snaps in training camp as some of these younger guys are. So I think it's really more just a combination of a look-see and a way to kind of facilitate getting through all the snaps that you need without putting guys who just aren't going to embarrass themselves out there.
The first name that you mentioned, James Houston, who last played with the Browns. He's an undersized defensive end, 6'1", 245, who was super productive early in his career, but has since kind of bounced around after having some injuries. He's only 26, but of the three names, he's easily the most productive so far in the NFL. But we'll see what happens with the workouts. But I have my doubts that the Cowboys will sign him.
Yeah, I mean, I think all these guys kind of fall into that same sort of category, right? Like tweener types, right? That you feel like, I think, the situation is, like we said, it's a look-see where you're trying to facilitate practice. I think the long-term situation you're looking for is maybe this is a guy who I could put on a practice squad to get call up a couple times. He's a special teams guy. I mean, when you're looking at these body types, right, they fall right in line with the kind of body types you need now, especially with the new kickoff and return rules. The kind of bigger linebacker, smaller defensive end types that can run. That's where you feel like you could get some usefulness from these guys outside of just eating up a bunch of snaps during training camp. If you get through the end of it, they have a good training camp. You still have a need. They were already street free agents, so there's a high likelihood that if they get cut, they'll make it through, and you can add them to your practice squad. And they've been in your system all training camp. They could be a viable part of calling them up if you need them in the first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, the other one, Cameron Klein, big defensive end, more one of these inside-outside guys. He's bounced around a little bit. And then Jesse Luketa, who I actually know pretty well. Do you want me to give you the little
please.
So Jesse Luketa, Micah Parsons were the two highest rated defensive prospects in Pennsylvania during the 2018 cycle. They both go to Penn State. They're both playing linebacker. 2018, Micah starts. Jesse's on the bench. 2019, they play together. 2020 is the COVID season. Micah opts out. Jesse plays and starts. 2021, Micah gets drafted. Jesse plays a full-time starter for Penn State. He goes to the combine, and this is somebody who's running a 4.58, 4.60 in pre-draft training, pulls his hamstring on the 40-yard dash and runs in the 4.9s, goes in the 7th round, but has since played linebacker, off-ball linebacker, and defensive end for Arizona, but decided not to sign his restricted tender, and that's why the Cowboys are working him out now, because he's a free agent. Also, just so happens to be Micah Parsons' best friend. And I'm not surprised that it's Jesse working out with the Cowboys, considering Micah's close to him.
I mean, we need to get it confirmed. Is Jesse going to rub it in Micah's face if he gets signed before Micah does? Like, that's
Yes,
going to be the interest. That's going to be
100%.
yeah. I can't wait for that potential eventuality. So, very exciting, very cool
Yeah.
story. Honestly, and yeah, maybe another guy that Will McClay special, right? Where maybe he just was had a rash of bad luck. It wasn't a great fit necessarily for what Arizona needed. And that kind of tweener, that guy that has played a little bit of everything, those guys are super valuable. And it's always great to have guys like that on your roster because you can just plug them in and they're reliable.
And a very, very good run defender. And that's why they fit so well together. And Micah and Jesse have talked about this forever, wanting to play together. The Cowboys almost traded for Jesse a couple years ago because Bones Fossil loved him on special teams. And that's honestly maybe how Jesse gets onto this roster
Yeah.
is because of his special teams ability. It's just something to watch. Their connection's really close. If you watch the draft, the 2021 draft coverage, Jesse Luketa's in the green room with Micah Parsons. They're up and down dancing Hard Knocks in 2021. There's a scene of Luketa and Parsons talking about his first preseason game. They're very close, and that's why Jesse's having a workout with Dallas.
It's exciting. That's great. And hopefully, and hopefully, there's an opportunity for him to come in and really serve the Cowboys as well, and be a guy that comes in and is maybe a bottom of the roster defender and a guy who can play some special
Well,
teams.
and I've heard from a very, very reliable source that maybe, hey, could play some Sam linebacker, could play off the ball a little bit, could play on the edge, and maybe he's competing with Tyrus Wheat for that kind of role.
Yeah.
One of those guys that bounces around a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see if the Cowboys sign one of these three. We'll see if they bring in somebody else. But don't expect the Cowboys to sit pat on their roster as we get ready for practices on Tuesday. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. He's Landon McCool. I'm at Marcus_Mosier on Twitter, at McCoolBCB. We will see you right back here tomorrow.